What is up, guys? TopTierYugioh here, and today I wanted to share one of my favorite decks of all time, and if you haven't already guessed it, it's Sky Strikers. So today I've got a Sky Striker deck profile for you guys that I think is a solid choice for the current format, but is also pretty well positioned to be a contender moving forward as well, due to their ability to outgrind beatdown decks, but also quickly turn the corner in OTK against slower decks too. And so it's that ability to play multiple roles, or multi-roles, that makes Sky Strikers incredibly difficult to beat. And now, just some quick information to contextualize the rest of this profile. This is a 40 card deck, generally built for going second, with only a few cards in the side that are specifically meant for going first. And in most matchups, you either win the game by stopping your opponent turn after turn with an onslaught of hand traps and defense while chipping away at their life points before ending the game with an Accesscode Talker, or you will let your opponent do whatever they want, break their board, whittle down the last of their resources, and outgrind them. And so which strategy you end up going for is going to depend on the matchup, the cards in hand, and a few other factors, but it's the result of this decision that will directly lead to a lot of your wins and losses. And so be sure to keep in mind what role you're going to play and how you plan to win the game whenever you're playing with a Sky Striker deck, because it is important. It is one of the more technical play heavy based decks, especially considering how common Sky Striker decks are, how common knowledge it is. And so let's go ahead and move into the profile. Starting with the Sky Striker engine, we have 3 copies of Best Girl Ray, 2 copies of Rose, 1 copy of Hornet Drones, and then 1 copy of Reinforcements of the Army. I'd say this ratio is pretty standard. The only difference is sometimes I see people playing 3 copies of Rose, but I really didn't want to play too many normal summons in this deck, especially since we already have essentially 7 Sky Striker monsters, and that already gives us a 71% chance of hard drawing one turn 1. And then if we happen to not draw a Sky Striker monster, we still have Area 0, and so we have a 39% chance of drawing that. And then if we still don't have a Sky Striker monster, like if we didn't open a Sky Striker monster, so all of these are in deck, but we did open Area 0, because we have 6 Sky Striker monsters that can be hit by Area 0, we have about a 45% chance of revealing one with that Area 0. And so we have a really good chance of opening one, and I felt that adding the 3rd copy of Rose just was a bit too much. I wanted to use that space on something else. Next, we have 2 copies of Area 0, 1 copy of Terraforming. I really like the Terraforming over the 3rd copy of Area 0 because it's better in multiples, to where if you open Terraforming with Area 0, you can just set the Terraforming and then Area 0 targeting it, versus if you open up multiple Area 0s, you can't really do anything with it. So that's why I like the Terraforming over the 3rd copy, even though sometimes having more Sky Striker cards in your deck is advantageous. And so it's a little bit tricky there, but I definitely like this ratio a lot. Then we have 1 copy of Multi-Roll, and that kind of rounds out the rest of the Sky Striker engine cards. Now for some of the utility Sky Striker cards, I have 3 copies of Shark Cannon, 2 copies of Widow Anchor, 2 copies of Afterburners, and then 1 copy of Eagle Booster. So this is a ratio that I've been enjoying a lot. I especially like the 3 copies of Shark Cannon. I was hesitant about playing 3 at first because going second, it doesn't really do as much, but in essentially every other stage of the game, Shark Cannon's a really good card, and so you definitely want to play as many as possible, just because resolving multiples is so powerful as well. It also kind of leans towards our win condition of setting up an access code too, and so having more copies of Shark Cannon helps. So I definitely like having that. Also the Afterburners. I decided to play 2 copies of Afterburners and no copies of Jamming Wave, mostly because the top decks right now don't set spells and traps that you want to destroy. And so it didn't really make sense to me to play Jamming Waves if it wasn't going to be live, or even if it was live, it wouldn't really do as much as you would like it to. Like, even if you're playing against Outlich and they set a trap, who cares if you destroy it? I'd much rather destroy one of their monsters, or at least bait one of their negations by targeting that monster with an Afterburners versus a set card. So I definitely like double Afterburners a lot more. And then the Eagle Booster. This was something that I have been enjoying as well. It's kind of similar to Shark Cannon, to where it doesn't do as much when you're going second turn 1, because they're not going to be stopping your Link monsters usually. Like, no one's going to be wasting a negation on a Kagari or Hayate or something in a lot of cases, and so Eagle Booster isn't as useful there. But what I find is that just having it in your deck is really good for closing out games, because when you are making that decision between whether or not you want to outgrind opponents or OTK them with access code, if you choose incorrectly and go for access code, it leaves you open to a lot of hand traps such as Valor, Imperm on your Celine, Nibiru. It opens you up to a lot of things, and having that ego booster and being able to search it really kind of protects your combos and can ensure that you're going to be able to win the game whenever you do decide to do so. So I definitely like that ego booster a lot. But that's pretty much it for the Sky Striker engine. Let's go ahead and move into the hand traps, which we play a lot of hand traps because, again, this is going second deck. So we have 3 copies of Nibiru, 3 copies of Ash Blossom, and then we have 3 copies of Imperm, which I think these 9 hand traps are probably the best ones of this current format. Sorry about the proxy for the Imperm, by the way. If anybody has a third Imperm that they'd like to donate to me, I'm open to that. Next, we have 3 copies of Valor. I think you gotta max out on it in this deck because Celine is so important to your win condition, and so you need to have one in deck for Needle Fiber in a lot of cases, but also because we played Pot of Desires, and so you don't want to risk banishing, 2 Desires, drawing 1, and then not being able to Needle Fiber into Celine and then go for game if you needed to do that. And so I like playing 3 just so you almost always have that option. So plus it's good. Effect negation's at a premium right now. It's one of the best types of interruptions. But to round out the rest of the hand traps, we played 2 copies of Ghost Ogre, which used to be Ghost Mourners, but I decided to go for Ogres instead right now because Numerons are coming out, and you kind of want to hedge against that because S0 is a win condition for them. And although it doesn't negate monsters, just removing them from the field is pretty huge as well. Plus, it has synergy with Rose, so that's always pretty cool too. But that's it for the hand traps. And now just to wrap up this deck profile, we do have 7 flex spots, and for those, I'm playing 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, really good against Eldritch, good against Dragon Link, Numerons. 2 copies of Mystic Mine, which is just generally good going second, can be a win condition, searchable by terraforming, just an insane card. And then we have 2 copies of Pot of Desires for consistency, and then 1 copy of Upstart Goblin. Desires is definitely good enough to play at 3, but I just feel like in this deck, because your resources are so important, it's kind of difficult and risky to really resolve more than 1. And so I felt that 2 is kind of the optimal number. And I definitely get playing 3 to see it more often, but I don't think this is a deck that can risk even potentially drawing into that second one because it's a dead card and you really need all of your cards in a lot of cases. That's pretty much it for the main deck. Once again, this is 40 cards. No traps except for the Imperms. Moving on to the extra deck, which is pretty straightforward. 3 copies of Kagari, 3 copies of Shizuku, 3 copies of Hayate, 1 Kaina, 2 Zeke, Needle Fiber, Celine, and Access Code. All pretty standard. The only thing that I think is maybe questionable is the 3rd Hayate or the 2nd Zeke. These are both kind of flex spots, but I really just like having more Sky Striker cards so that when you're grinding out, you just have those resources. You don't really have to worry about it as much, and you have a bit more flexibility. Now, one thing I am thinking about changing is maybe taking out the 2nd Zeke for a Hida. Hida comes up sometimes, but so does the 2nd copy of Zeke, and so it's really what I hate to say, but player preference, but this has been working out really well for me. So let's go ahead and get into the side deck pretty quickly. I'm gonna try to keep this profile pretty short. So for the side deck, there are 3 copies of DD Crow, 1 Pankratops, the 3rd copy of Ghost Ogre, 2 Ghost Mourners. I've been testing out Ghost Reapers, which have been pretty good at mirror matches because this deck is pretty common, but it's also really good against Needle Fiber decks, and so sometimes I'll side it in against Synchro Eldritch, for example, or even Adamancipators. Well, although Adamancipators, they don't need Needle Fiber, they can still beat you without it, but Synchro Eldritch especially, it's a key part of their combo, and so it's kind of good in that matchup. I'm still testing it though. So far so good, but there are probably better things, so you can change this for anything that you'd like to change it for. Side decks are so subjective. Then I have 1 Hercules base for grindier matchups, Jamming Wave for, again, grindy matchups or decks that just play a lot of defense, and then the 3rd Cosmic Cyclone for that same reason. And then the final thing that I play in the side deck is 3 copies of There Can Be Only One for when your opponent makes you go first. So that's pretty much it for the side deck. Again, the side deck is very subjective. You can change it to whatever you want, but this has been working for me. It's still, it's not like set in stone or anything. I'm still trying to figure out what's going to be good in this current format, what's going to be good with new Neurons coming out, what decks are going to be incorporating that. Maybe the third Ogre goes in the main. Maybe Reaper turns out to not be that good. Who knows, but for now this has been working. Also, really quickly, just to show you guys how consistent the deck is, I just wanted to do a couple of test hands really quickly, again, just to show you guys how consistent it is. I already power shuffled. I'm just going to do a few other quick shuffles and just look at some of these hands. Weird. Oh, weird. Okay. So going second, we'd have 4 disruptions. Wow. And then let's see, for our 6th card, what does the upstart get us? Wow, we're like, this is insane. No one's comboing through this, and then you have the mine as well. Hornet drones as a starter play. This is an insane hand going second. Very unlikely. Probably the results of bad shuffling. So I'm gonna shuffle some more, because I guess my power shuffling was not good enough. But that was a good hand. The upstart really got us there. Alright, so going second, so we have 2 disruptions on our opponent's turn. This is going to be difficult for them to play through. And then even if they do, we have the afterburners plus the mine. So we have ways to stop our opponents, but then also ways to break their board. And then this terraforming potentially gets us to area 0, which gets us to Ray in a lot of cases. So let's go ahead and see. So, oh, well, we drew Rose for our 6th card, so we really don't even need to, we don't need to depend on the area 0 to get to our Sky Striker monster. So again, this would be a really solid hand as well. We really have everything we could possibly want in this hand. Disruption, board breaking, starter cards. So let's do one more. Again, Sky Strikers is incredibly consistent. I just wanted to show you guys, what that kind of looks like what your hands look like when you play this deck. I think a lot of times when you're, at least for me when I'm watching deck profiles, I always wonder what do the hands look like with this? What does playing this deck feel like? And so here's another hand to where we don't have any disruption in this hand. So this hand would be kind of difficult to play through and play around, because our opponent will be able to do whatever they want. If we're playing against Adamanticators, we probably lose. If we're playing against Outlich, we have to deal with 2 disruptions, maybe even 3 or 4, depending on if they have a hand trap or if they have the ability to set up their Outlich engine too. Let's see what our 6th card is. Nibiru feels bad. So what I would probably do with this hand is probably set the terraforming area 0 it and see what happens. So let's just see what happens, or let's just see what the top 3 cards are. Ray, Ash, Ogre. So at least we get Ray. That's something better than just starting with Rose. And then you'd have the Desires and see what you got into, but this hand would be really limited when going second, just because you don't have any disruption and no direct ways to break opponent's board. So it would be difficult, especially if the opponent opened up well. It's going to be the last hand to look at. Imperm, Area 0, Cyclone, Shark Cannon, and Veiler. So in our first 5, we have 2 disruptions, which is pretty good. Then we have Area 0, which could potentially get us to our engine. And, well, we drew into it anyways, so I think this was the 6th card in another hand too. Weird. But this is, again, a pretty good hand. It has everything we wanted to have. We have disruption, we have our engine, and then we have, these other cards. And Area 0 can potentially get us to more parts of our engine. Cyclone can be really good. Shark Cannon is sometimes good depending on the matchup. And if we do decide to use the Area 0, let's see what the next 3 are. Multi-roll, Imperm, and Ogre. So we get multi-roll at least, which is solid. So again, I'd say this is also a pretty good hand that gives you the ability to kind of do what you want to do early game to set up the rest of the game to win how you want to win. So solid hands. Once again, as you guys probably already knew, Sky Striker is an incredibly consistent deck, but this is just a testament of that. So, but alright guys, that pretty much wraps up this profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I tried to keep this profile pretty short. I know a lot of my deck profiles are like 20, 25, 30 minutes. I wanted to test out doing something a little bit shorter, a little less in depth, which is definitely easier with something like Sky Strikers, where we all know what the cards do, we all know how the deck plays. And so let me know if you guys like this shorter format, but also, as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, let me know in the comment section. I usually try to get back to all of them. I really appreciate it, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.